we go.
How's it going?
Great, man. Great. Thanks for having me on your show, on your podcast. Thanks for the invitation.
My pleasure. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. How was your holiday?
Oh, great. Yeah, happy late Thanksgiving. Canadian Thanksgiving.
Yes. Did you guys celebrate it down there?
We do. We absolutely do. Yeah. Why not have just another big meal every year?
Can't complain, can you?
No, not at all.
And you guys had your family vacay. You made time for that. That was great.
Yeah. That was a really cool sort of post-summer touring decompression, and it was awesome.
That's amazing. So this is your studio that you're in, Jason?
Yeah, this is my home studio.
Yeah, nice.
This was a bit of a pandemic project. I took my rather sterile home office that I use and made it feel like a sort of a vibey East Nashville sort of studio.
I love it. It's got that rustic vibe to it.
Yeah. Just a little place I can go close the doors and be creative and make it feel like a studio. And it's awesome. There's been a lot of cool music created in here so far.
And it's probably been interesting because since the pandemic, you probably love being in that area now. It's like, this is my sanctuary of making music and coming up with creative ideas.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So first things first, those guitars in the back, where are those from?
Okay, so let me just pan around over here and show what I got. So there's a red, orange red Telecaster back there, and that was the first guitar that I bought when I moved to. Actually, even before I moved to Nashville, I went into Guitar Center and it was hanging up on the wall. I put a sort of a mint green vintage pick guard on it. It came with a pearl pick guard that I wasn't really big on, so a little too fancy. So that's been my main workhorse guitar, I think, for the bulk of my career. There's a 335 Gibson Sunburst guitar back there, a Tobacco Burst, and that's a beautiful guitar. Gibson. I got to thank my friend Tina Simpkin. She was at head of Gibson Canada back in the day, and she gave me three guitars. She gave me, which was a 335, a Les Paul standard, the black Les Paul back there. And that 335 was actually on the cover of SOCAN Words and Music. I used that for that photo shoot and many videos and live and everything. There's a butterscotch Telecaster back there. There was actually a guy had reached out to me on social media about a decade ago and just offered to build me a guitar. And sadly, I don't think he's actually in business anymore, but he did a beautiful job on that Tele, and it needs a setup, but those are sort of the main guitars. And I've got an acoustic over here. I'll pan my camera over here.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And right there is my trusty J200 that's been in a lot of videos. And I've basically wrote the bulk of my career on that guitar. And there's a washburn if you can see it right there. That was my first acoustic I ever bought. So that's pretty much the arsenal of guitars.
I love it. And for yourself, when you're in your space, what are you thinking of exactly to get in the zone, to tune out the outside world and just go within yourself?
Oh, gosh. Well, sometimes, it's been fun learning. I use this program Logic Pro X, and I'm real basic stuff, but I'll get some beats going. I might use Splice, which is pretty cool, just for some inspiration, and just get a beat going. And I do more co-writing than solo writing, but I have in the recent years, out of sort of being forced to, done some solo co-writing or solo writing especially on this album, Diamonds in the Desert, my most recent project. I wrote about half of it by myself. And it's, we were just sort of hunkered down, and lockdown co-writing was harder. I did a few Zoom writes, but I ended up, it was a really kind of an interesting record because I had a vision in mind that it was hard to share with people what it was. And I thought I knew, but it was a moving thing. So I actually didn't want to drag my co-writers into something that I didn't really have a full vision of yet. Like, some of this stuff was really, that's where the title came from, Diamonds in the Desert. It was like, walking out into the unknown, searching for some gems out there, but you don't really know until you go searching for it. And so it was sort of, it had to be at least 50% of just a solo effort.
Oh yeah. But you know what? It's a beautiful process looking back, hindsight, of course. In that moment, that creative block, it can be very frustrating, can't it?
Yeah, it can. It can be, scary as it might seem, as walking out into the desert. You don't know if you're going to come up empty-handed, but the whole point is you got to sort of do the work and walk out in faith, looking for something, and it's really a cool thing. It's so mystical, like where songs come from, whether it's just you're jamming to a beat and then you start getting pictures in your mind of what it might be or what it could be, or you're just picking up a guitar and just start, seeing the pictures. That's really how it works for me. It's
your imagination.
Yeah, definitely.
Growing up in Pembroke, Ontario, shout out.
Shout out to Pembroke.
Growing up there, were you always this guy that knew that you wanted to be a singer and an artist out there? Did you have that imagination as a kid?
Really, from a really early age. I didn't know that until, later in my high school years that I really, really wanted to do this, for my life path, really. But really early on, music was always a part of my upbringing. My dad played in a local band, still does, a different band than he played in when I grew up. That band is sort of disbanded. I mean, guys just got a little older, but it was really cool. They played they didn't play bars. They played like dance halls, like weddings and anniversaries, community dances and stuff. So as a kid, if it would have been bars, I wouldn't have been able to go. But often my mom would bring me when I was just a little kid, and I got to watch at least for half the night, and then she'd, bring me home or whatever. But so as a kid, I've got all these, early memories of watching my dad on stage with this band, and just loved it, just absolutely loved it. And they played like really cool stuff too, because I'm an 80s kid, born in 1980. So we're talking like late, mid to late 80s, early 90s. So they played like pop music of the day. So it would have been Phil Collins and Rod Stewart. They would have played some Stevie Wonder, some Alabama, some like all Eagles, all over the map, really cool stuff. And then on the other side, my uncles had a band, and they played, everything from, Footloose, to some country stuff as well. So I got a lot of it. And then high school, I would, sort of follow around the local country bands, and some of them would let me hop up on stage and sing with them, and still friends with a lot of those people to this day.
That first big show that you did, I'm sure you'll never forget that moment of getting up there and building the courage, the fear. Does that go away over time, or do you still get a little nervous getting on stage?
No, it does go away. It does go. And it did go away early. I was never particularly nervous or anxious to get on stage. I mean, I think I suppose I was as a teenager, but it was usually my concern was, and still remains, is just stuff going wrong with my gear, like stuff going wrong with a guitar or a microphone cutting out, or a guitar. I play electric guitar, so all of a sudden ghosts in the guitar pedals, and then you have no guitar. And I will literally have, some nightmares about this stuff. Like I literally did during the sort of the time period that was the pandemic and stuff. I would have this recurring nightmare that they're like announcing me on stage at a big country festival, and I'm looking down at my pedal board and everything's disconnected, and I'm like, why is this not connected? And then I'm like, no, I'm not ready yet. And as I wake up, and it was like, I wondered where that came from. If it was like because we were away from the stage for so long or something like that, or the simple fact that I've actually had that happen, at least to where, my guitar will just drop out, will just cut out, and I won't know why. It'll be some like one little patch between pedals or something like that.
Right. And do you keep like a spare on the side off stage?
Well, usually there'll be some sort of a bypass, or
Okay.
I've had my guitar player like run over and help me out, but yeah, it's just one of those struggles, I think, as a guitar player that I'll hear about every now and then. There'll be, and it doesn't happen all the time, but like just randomly it'll be working fine, all of a sudden something will go.
Yeah.
So anyway, that it's never been that. It's just always been like an issue with gear or something. Even all
Mhm.
summer, this summer in particular, I didn't use wireless guitar like at all. I just was so fed up with like dealing with wireless things cutting out or whatever that I was like, hardwired in, old
No, old
school.
school. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep,
No
and no,
Bluetooth.
yeah, no issues. Just really
Yeah.
had a great time this summer playing. Every stage that we played on was just so wonderful. To be back on stage with in front of the crowds, in front of the fans. It was awesome.
I was talking to a few people, and the fans this time around, for the last couple of years, obviously we've all been in this pandemic. Coming out of it, being on stage, people are a little different, aren't they? Like there's more love, I feel, even greater than there was before. I think.
There was, yeah, I would agree with that. Especially the first couple of shows that we did, there was like an emotional intensity that was palatable. You could feel it with the crowd. It was like everybody was just like so thankful to get to do the simple thing, which is gather together and play music and be one with the band and the crowd. And yeah, I mean, it just really shows you that like we need that. Like we really do. We need it as musicians and recording artists, and the fans need it too. It's just we love to get together and have a good time, don't we?
Oh yes, I
You know,
love it.
yeah, and man, the emotion, like especially the first show back, was at a show called Grimsby, Ontario. It was for like one of their. It was a big, like maybe a centennial or something like that, and it was a party in the streets, and it was packed, and it was so great. And it was like this emotion snuck up on me, and just I was like, damn, this is heavy. It's hitting me right here, right in the feels, as the kids say.
Yes. Well, you could do the Zoom events and all that, but being in person, there's a difference, isn't there?
Oh yeah, yeah. And to I like to we get loud on stage, and it's like between the roar of the crowd and the loudness of the stage. It's a good night when you lie down, your ears are ringing just a little bit.
Oh, yes. Yeah. There's a technology out there now that you can put these VR goggles on and go to experience a concert.
Oh, right.
But it's not the same. No, in the metaverse, but it's not the same because I think there's an energy exchange from the band to the crowd, like as an
Oh
audience
my.
member. Yeah.
I mean, who knows, right? Like
Yeah.
people thought that the internet was going to be a fad in of itself.
True
I,
that.
I mean, I don't want to see that the world go there. Like, who wants that? I don't think it will. I mean, everything can happen to a certain extent, but ultimately, people like to gather and like to get, bump up against each other in the crowd
Yes.
and get hot and sweaty and, in the summer night. So, I mean, you just can't get that in anything else but the real thing.
Exactly. When you're up there, what is that energy you feel from the crowd? Most oftentimes, what is it that feeds you? You're on stage.
Oh man, usually it's just all positive and just all love, and it's really kind of hard to explain. I think that music is a real human experience. Like it's a real unique and sort of divine experience. Like when like music and mathematics. Like I'm not a math wizard, but like it's helping my kids with their homework and stuff, and you still get your mind blown that like that when you follow the steps to this equation, like it's so cosmic and
Hmm.
mind blowing that like if you follow these steps you will get that answer. It just has to work. It's just and when certain notes and harmonics are played together and the band is all like totally locked in sync, and you're making you got this beautiful cohesive thing coming off the stage. And when the crowd, when you get like hundreds or thousands of people like all together like singing, like this combination of music and harmony and the crowd singing back, it just creates this sort of, just this power, this energy that
It's a ball. Yeah, it's a force.
It's just this force of energy, man. That's, and I experienced that on my level, and I experienced it on like, I'm aware of like my standing in the hierarchy of the music industry. I'm certainly, I'm somewhere between like a busker and Beyonce. Like I'm like, so like I've experienced it on a big stage, like a Boots and Hearts Country Fest up out of Toronto with like 20,000 people and, a really big energy like that where everybody's singing along. I've experienced it on small stages. And then I've been a fan, whether I'm attending Garth Brooks or the Eagles, and I'm just there in the stands on the receiving end, participating in it, which is equally like differently, but equally as beautiful and powerful. Like that's what got me into music in the beginning, in the first place. Garth Brooks was my first concert, and to hear and it was in Ottawa, and to hear whatever there was, 18,000 people cohesively singing along to Unanswered Prayers, and he was just carrying it with his acoustic guitar. I was like, man, I want to know what that feels like.
You're seeing this from a fan standpoint or from the audience. Are you looking at certain things that the artist is doing or the band is doing to apply it now to what you do? Or can you just lay back and just say, okay, I'm just going to enjoy the show as a fan?
Oh, as a fan. Yeah, I mean, I'm always very intentively like looking at the musicians, listening to all of the parts and stuff. Like the Eagles was the last concert that I went to, and it was here in Nashville, and it was a bucket list show for me. I was so thrilled. I was able to get a last minute ticket. And I sat up in the nosebleeds. It was like literally probably the last ticket. I was expecting to be at a show, and then that show ended up getting canceled due to more the lockdowns at the time in Ontario. So I found myself in Nashville for the night, got the ticket, and just to be up there like listening to Joe Walsh shred the guitar, and Stuart Smith and Vince Gill, and then watching all the different parts of the band, and just really thinking about like how remarkably well rehearsed and insane they are, like next level. And then these songs that have carried as a songwriter, those guys are the ultimate, like the ultimate top of the mountain. You're talking 50 years. Don Henley said that night that it was 50 years ago since Take It Easy was released to the radio waves. So that's at least 2 or 3 generations of fans. Half a century of their music is mind blowing. But the power, and then it's very inspiring. It'll either make you like want to like burn all of your songwriting tools, or be inspired.
Yes.
By your heroes. And for me, most of the time, some days I just want to burn it all, but most of the time it's just pure inspiration, because on whatever level you can achieve. I mean, nobody's going to get to be the Eagles, but I mean, whatever level you get to achieve, if you can have a song that's touched people's lives in some way, it's really a powerful thing.
When you look at the people that inspire us, you always wonder, what is that aura? What is it about that person that makes it exude this energy towards us? It's a radiancy of light. And like you said, the Eagles or Garth Brooks, what do you think it is that those individuals have? People are drawn to that. It's more than just the music. It's something, and we don't know them, but we love them.
That's a really good question. I think it's because we do think we know them. Like, I think that you think that you know them through their music or through interviews that you've seen or whatever. You think you get to know them like a local, like a friend or a local favorite. And you get all these people together that think that they know, Garth Brooks. They're sort of like cheering him on, cheering for him. They just kind of like his personality, but they love the songs too. But I think it's also just something that people love to rally around one thing. Like, we just love to gather together and rally around, music. and it's almost like, I imagine, like, for folks that aren't religious, it's probably as close as they'll get to a religious experience or something like that, like where they just kind of get together with a group of people and just sort of feel like you put it, like this love and light and
Mm-hmm.
that. I don't like. This is probably why I always gravitated to like country music or things like that, like a little more like I was never attracted to darker music,
Interesting.
sort of like, I don't know. I'm not gonna like name names,
Right.
ever, but like you know what they are, but like
I do.
like
Yeah.
a heavier, sort of angrier, darker thing like that. And never appealed to me. Now that's to not to say that like that I like everything that's like sunshine and rainbows and butterflies. Like it's not that. It's because I actually, on the contrary, gravitate. I like a lot of Vince Gill music, and I like melancholy. I like this. I like blues, and I like the sad songs as well. But there's something about music that's just kind of lifts people's spirits, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. Your one song, it's so funny, Jason. I've been listening to it for years, and I keep posting it up. They don't make them like this anymore or that anymore. And just for years, just been cranking it in the car, and it moves me. And I would always share it with everyone. I say, "Oh, you got to watch this video. It's so heartfelt and touching." Where did that come from? That inspiration? And thank you for that song and video, by the way.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you very much, Zach, for sharing it on social media and for bringing it up. The song, I wrote that song at a real coming of age, which for me, maybe that's a little late to be coming of age, but I was like 30. But maybe it's normal. Maybe it's natural. Maybe some people get there later, much lower, or get there or get there earlier. But for me, it was like a coming of age thing going. Like I had already been married for some 7 years by then, and had our second child, our son, would have been 2 years old.
Okay.
But still, like this realization, this like resistance to grow up or something, and you finally realize like, oh wow, like I'm a father and I'm a husband and I'm this role now. And then you sort of I was looking, at my grandfather at the time, and we would get together for Christmas or Thanksgiving as people celebrated. And he was such like the patriarch of the family, gets to sit there at the head of the table and sort of look at not only his own children, which are like my mother and aunts and uncles, and then my father, and then all of the grandchildren and great grandchildren, and him and my grandmother, who at the time, they would have been married 50 plus years. They ended up being married for 60 years. And just sort of, I thought that would make a really beautiful country song. I thought that like, there's gotta be a story in this that's this moving, because what a beautiful life to really build a life in a very traditional sense together. And so as, at the time, as a young father and husband, sort of going like, boy, if you do it right, that's how you end up, if you do it right. It's not so easy in this modern world that we live in, and everything that can be thrown at you in every different direction. But if you do it right, and if you're lucky enough, and blessed enough, if you follow that path, you might end up, there where he did, and sort of hang your hat on a life well lived. And I thought that it would make for a good song, and turns out, man, it ended up having a much wider reach of an audience than I ever imagined, because at some point it wasn't like it was much more than specifically like my grandfather. It became like everybody's.
Yes. Or father. Yes.
Or father, or just father, or just a stepfather, or a friend, or somebody that in the community. Really, it's like didn't matter. Like my grandpa's name was Harvey, but it didn't, like, it was, people saw them. Maybe they saw a bit of themselves in it too. And man, I tell you what, one of the most powerful things, like it, especially around that time. Where it was winning awards and stuff, and it was, still really, and even 10 years later, now we're 10 years after that song came out, but people would come up to me. I had this one example where this guy came up to me after a show, and I could get like misty-eyed talking about it right now, but like he came up after a show and said, like, I hadn't spoken to my father in 20 years. And I heard the song, and we reconciled and laid our different side. And here he is, you know, with me. I brought him to the show with me, and I'm just like,
Oh,
man,
I got goosebumps
chills.
when you just said that. Yeah.
Something you never expected, you know, to happen, but it would just really hit you, and it was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, you know, and for myself, again, I know various individuals. He's in his late 70s. He was a fireman here in Calgary, and he's got, you know, he pays by cash. He's that guy that knows everyone in the community because he walks every day and he used to walk to work and never left.
And it's funny, but it's sort of ironic because I never like with cash.
No,
I'll lose it. I'll lose the, you know, and I'll keep track of it. But I think that the point of that line, pays cash for everything, is that he accounted for every dollar. Like he didn't spend his money reckless. You know, that's what that line means. And it's like, it's just sort of about like these sort of inherent values.
Well, I mean, you know this, Jason, is that, you know, that era, they would keep their stuff forever and they'd take care of things.
Oh yeah, they'd save soup.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah. Times have changed.
It is. Times have changed. I think that, like, especially I'm not sure how old you are, but like my grandparents' generation, like they were probably the last generation to really know what hard times feel like. Yeah. Like real hard times, like World War II times, rationing.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And then you know, people didn't hand out like credit like they did. Like you had to, you know, there wasn't bank loans and things like, and car loans. Like you really did have to save up and buy it, or know somebody local that would lend some money and, you know, to help build, you know, so you can get a house built and things like that. And
that was the thing. They would never put things on credit. If they didn't have the money, they would not buy it. They would save up and pay cash for it, or like literally.
Yes. Yeah. Because that, you know, it was the rainy day thing. Like they, you know, they just always thought that, you know, things are good now, but they might not be in some time in the near future. So we need to be prepared for that. And there's a lot of lessons in that. We think we enjoy so much luxury and comfort. Mm-hmm. And you think that the food will always be on the shelves at the grocery store and the gas will always be in the pump. Yeah. And it's like, man, I talked to a farmer friend recently who said that it's only like 3 to 6 months between like what the farms have, you know, between like growing and then the grocery shelves. Like if something happened, you know, that really tilted that 3 to 6 month gap, you could be out of food. Like it's not like it's just always there.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's getting tough for the farmers. I mean, we have lots of friends here in Alberta that are farmers, and, you know, there's more pressure on them now than ever. Right. So they've kind of just,
well, I was telling, this is what we discussed around the Thanksgiving dinner table last night. I literally just had this conversation with my kids. The most important job on the planet is our farmers. If we don't eat, we don't do anything else. Okay. And we always sort of expect that it's always there. And I think that that's really the heart of Thanksgiving, was like to celebrate and be thankful for the harvest, and to be thankful that you got a meal on the table and that there is food on the shelves at the grocery store.
Oh yeah. And there's beer in the fridge as well because of them.
That's right. Without the wheat and stuff, we don't got no beers. Yeah.
So that video, did Harvey marry his sweet Marilyn?
Yeah. And they're, you know, a couple from the Ottawa Valley, from Pembroke, and just, you know, married young and stayed together forever and lived right there in that little town. Never moved away. Just right there, and built a life, and aunts and uncles and everybody still lives there. But that was at a time where you could do that. There was lots of jobs in that town. It's a lumber town. Oh yes. Okay. A lumber town and you know, just kind of a blue collar town. There's lots of jobs, but they, like, you know, like a song, the railroad tracks got pulled out And I forget which rail line company it was. Like it might have been like Canadian Pacific, CP Rail, or something like that. But they ended up pulling the train tracks out of most of those small towns, and which just killed was the lifeline to send product in and out of the town. And so, then companies set up along the 401, Belleville,
Right.
all that whole way. But everything sort of northeast of that, all of that whole Highway 17, Ottawa Valley area, whatever, a lot of those old companies went away, and people had to move away to get work.
In that video, is that your grandparents?
Yeah, it is.
Wow. So that's grandma and grandpa in that video. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and the rest of my family too. Like my dad is just over my shoulder playing acoustic guitar. I got uncles in the video, cousins. Sadly, I have my own wife and kids in the video. We were on tour that year up in Canada when we shot that music video, and my wife was very pregnant at the time with one of our kids, probably our daughter Sarah, and so we just couldn't get them all there to the location to shoot that. But that's the house that I celebrated like many Christmases and Thanksgivings in and stuff.
Wow. So it's everything, that'll always be burned in memory and forever there, archived.
Yeah. It's become a real family treasure, and sadly my grandma, her health is fading right now. She's 86. Yeah. And we're just keeping her in our thoughts and in our prayers. It's we lost our grandpa about 5 or 6 years ago, and that's the circle of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you get to see the video? Did your grandma get to see the video?
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
So proud of that, and and just the fact that it went all over the world, and to where there was a young Irish singer from Ireland that he recorded the song and recreated the video featuring like his grandpa and his family in Ireland. And I got all these calls, including my grandma. People thought that somebody stole my song, and they're like, which is kind of true, but or at least appropriated it. But it's not like there's no money in that for me, but that's fine. I was actually just really touched that somebody on the other side of the world thought that much about my song, that it meant something to their family, that they went that far to, make it part of their story too. So, at the end of the day, like it's not just only about, the making the monetary royalties or whatever. It's just the reach of something creative is a beautiful thing.
In that video, the song always just plays in my head. Like I pretty much know your lyrics to that song. So, they would go to save some time for the Lord, or they help build a Lutheran church. Yeah. And it's them in the kitchen and grandpa helping grandma. There's something about that life that we all deep down want to strive for. I think there's something in that beauty of simplicity, isn't there? Yeah. Well,
I'm really into, I've in the past bunch of years, I've gotten really just kind of into some, I don't know, what would you say, hobby psychology and philosophy and stuff like that. So Jordan Peterson, great Canadian author and psychologist and podcaster and stuff.
Isn't he great, by the way?
Fantastic. Like really, really, really great. I've read his book and watched hours and hours of podcasts and interviews and stuff. And it's really, I think that the interesting thing with my song, They Don't Make Them Like That Anymore, and that story, it's ultimately, it's an archetype of a character and a model like life, and it's really a best case scenario. Like it really doesn't get any better than that. Like even what I love, one thing Peterson was talking about, like even if you're a Hollywood celebrity with like millions and millions of dollars and cars and houses and yachts, and through the lens of Instagram or something like that, it looks like the ideal life. But like if you're twice divorced and half your kids don't talk to you and your friends are superficial, then it really does mean nothing. Like, you don't have a better life than, a small town man who has a job that he's good at, competent at. People know where to go to get, their brakes done, or their plumbing, or their done. And he comes home, and his wife she works too. But the point is, they come home and they have a real authentic love and family love, and when a healthy thing with their children. And that's like it, as far as life goes. I mean, it doesn't get better. Like, that's literally, that is the high. That is the top of the mountain.
Yeah. It's always easier to say or judge what that person is doing. So Peterson once said, oh, you might see this guy in California driving his Porsche, and you might think, quote unquote, what a lucky bastard that guy is to have that and all those things. But you don't know what that guy's going through in his head, that maybe he's driving that fast because he wants to wrap himself around a pole because he's done with life, right? You don't know what people are going through.
Right. I love that he put together, like, we get wrapped up, especially in this industry, in the music industry and stuff, because you're creating, you're being creative, and you're creating this, this life, through songs and everything else. And you really try to align it. I have tried to align it authentically and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that in a celebrity culture world, I mean, and especially Instagram and everything. I mean, I fantasized, living in my small town, thinking that, like, out there somewhere was the dream, was the better life. And part of that song, where that came from, when I was 30, was like, oh, it was never out there somewhere.
Here and here.
Yes, and it was all of the stuff. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it was all of the things that matter most. It wasn't finally having a number one song, or it wasn't finally getting, to this as on the side of a career. It doesn't mean that you, like, don't try to achieve anything. Like, that's not that, but, like, those things are fleeting. That's the ultimately the message I'm always getting from Jordan Peterson is those things are the fleeting things, and people need to sort of anchor their lives to matters, to really what sustains, and building your house on the rock instead of the sand.
Before we get going, when we look at music today, and as an artist today, oftentimes we'll hear things about whiskey or beer or trucks. How can you stay unique without another artist in such a competitive landscape thinking that, hey, that's actually my version of a song?
Oh, well, I think...
or how does it work? Yeah.
Well, I think that... I think it's part of that doesn't need to be overthought too much. And I can be an overthinker. Mm-hmm. But one of the guys that I've long admired is Dierks Bentley. I really like his records. I like his songs, singing, everything for many years. And I heard him on an interview with people talking about, quote unquote, bro country, singing about, like, beer and trucks and parties and stuff. And he was just like, well, you let me know, buddy, when kids stop, driving around in trucks, chasing girls, drinking beer, when they stop writing about it. But it's like, with every generation, it's just like, that's always going to be a constant. And it really has been. You can go back to, Alabama, listen to the Dixieland Delight. It's just like, it's a song about driving around with your girl out. Yes. Alan Jackson, Chattahoochee, about picking up your girl.
Classic.
We're in a vehicle, we're hanging out, we're going out to the country. And so you find different ways to tell that story. I'm amazed. It never ceases to amaze me how many times we can tell that story just a little bit different.
But you know what? We all have a story of it. That's the thing, right? So it's great. What made you move to Nashville over just staying in your hometown or moving to Toronto or Alberta? What made you say Nashville is a good place to go? And anybody that's aspiring to be an artist here in Canada, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, it's different. I will say it's different today than whenever I was, aspiring to get into the industry. There's much more going on in Canada. There's the tools. Like I remember hanging out in studios talking, somebody saying like, oh, one day we'll just be able to send files of, vocals and instrumentation across the internet, but it was too slow back then. Like I'm only 42 and I feel like a dinosaur. Like this has not been, technology has not been around that long. Like
it's moving fast though.
Yeah. Absolutely, and changing all the time. So like physically, you had to be in a Nashville recording studio if I wanted to work with some of my heroes, or at least walk the same streets that they did up and down Music Row, and go in some of the same studios as a lot of my heroes all came out of. Everybody, whether I was talking about Vince Gill or whatever, like he came from Oklahoma, Nashville, and so did Garth Brooks, and so I came from Canada to Nashville, and Alan Jackson came from Georgia to Nashville. Everybody came here, all of the songwriters and stuff. This seemed to, I grew up watching the Opry, and just early on, it was like in my head that like this was the place the country music gets made, and I always wanted to be a part of the scene here. That is not to say there's not like a ton of amazing, incredible musicians and songwriters and everything in Canada. There are, but we're spread out all over the place. It's there's no really central hub, of country music in Canada, I would say. I mean, from east to west, everything between. There's little pockets here and there, but even they do trips to Nashville, and I'll get to write and collaborate with people from
super cool.
The Maritimes, everything. People come to me, which is really convenient. Aside from that, I just always like being a part of the community and something to do like every day. But I miss my family and my parents and stuff, my friends. Like we get to see each other a few times a year. But I don't know what I would do on a day-to-day basis in Pembroke, Ontario. Like I would literally, I don't know what I would do every day. Probably work at a sawmill, something like there wouldn't be a community like there is here.
Have you gone back to your hometown to see just the vibe and what it's like from now, where you are today and where you came from?
Oh yeah, like I go back a couple times a year, and I love it. It's funny how a lot of things appear much smaller than they were when you were a kid, whether it's the halls of your high school or the local hockey arena or whatever. I remember I do this charity golf event in Pembroke once a year. We're on, so next year will be our 9th annual, and when we first got it going, somebody suggested, well, let's host it, at the Pembroke Memorial Center, which is where the Pembroke Lumber Kings hockey team plays. And I was like, oh gosh, no, I don't want anything that big. And when I showed back up, and they're like, no, I think it'll work out great. So I agreed to do it there, host it there, and have our tables all set up and the stage and everything. And it was beautifully decorated. And walking in, expecting it to be huge and not that big, because I was a kid when I was there last.
Wow. What is something that you could tell the next generation? Some of the lessons learned?
I would say it's so important to get in touch with who you are authentically. Is the number one thing. When you're embarking on, like, if you're going to embark on a artist career or whatever, like people, one of the comments I'll hear from people is, whether if it's a girl, often it'll be like, I want to do a Miranda Lambert sort of song.
Right.
Well, that only works if you're a Miranda Lambert personality. Like she is such a badass. Like she really is. I mean, she's a tough Texas girl, and that comes across in her music. And if I get a really sort of timid vibe, I mean, maybe you have a little tough Texan that you want to pull out. Maybe that's what you're attracted to from Miranda's music. But it's like you really have to kind of dive into that and make sure that that's there, or nobody's going to believe it. And so, and same thing, like from guys or whatever. It's just like, people point to like other people they want to be like, and I've done it too. My heroes are, like I said, guys like Vince Gill and stuff like that. And then you got to figure out what the authenticity, like why you're attracted to something, is the melodies, is it just the overall like vibe of the music. I was always attracted to guys that play guitar. And so, but whatever it is, it's like you know, you want to make sure that it's authentic. I heard this on a great podcast with Chris Stapleton and Joe Rogan, and because we've all seen this happen, where if, you know, what happens if you have a hit song that's totally not who you are, and it's now you got to go and sing it for a long time, and then it's like it's not even who you are. So it's like kind of like be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Do you ever get nervous though? Because you've had, I mean, over 20 hit songs. Do you ever get nervous to put out the next one and say, I don't know, I'm scared to put it out. What if people don't like it? What if 20 is all I got in me?
Well, yeah, I mean, a little bit in the sense that I heard another guy that I really like, John Mayer, say that nobody really dreams past their third record. And I was like, oh God, that's good. That's so good. Because you whole life, I mean, like dreaming up that first record and it's going to be this, and you have that energy rolling into your second one, third. A lot of times, like people like disappoint with their third, or you know, people maybe just only hit their stride in their third. But you know, once you've done, especially in country music, where we're a little more boxed in thematically, like especially male artists. You know, people complain about, you know, females complain about, you know, their complaints, and some of them are valid, but it's just like, I actually prefer writing with females a lot because you get to say a whole lot more. I mean, sassy, and in the case of the Dixie Chicks, or the Chicks now called, like they get to kill off a guy and early die. You know, you get to do all these things. Like guys don't get to write those kind of songs usually. It's like, you know, it's a party, it's love, it's like, it's a good time, it's getting out of town, it's whatever, it's a song about home and grandparents. We all do the same sort of things, but like you're seeing a little boxed in. You know, I admire, like, I got into this John Mayer music years ago. It seemed like you write about anything, like just stream of consciousness, writing. Some of the times I don't even know what it means, but it just sounds good. But if that makes any sense
totally.
at all.
Have you thought about NFTs before in the art, in that scene? Is that being a thing that people talk about now, like NFTs? I need
to learn more about that.
Yeah,
because people are talking about that a lot, and that's something I need to like put on I got to write it down right now.
Yeah, because I went to a conference in Texas, and man, there's like these companies just doing really cool things where, you know, some people can't afford to go to shows because, you know, the scalpers are raising the prices, and the artist is like, well, what the hell? The artist is not making the money from that show. So it's pretty cool to see. It's like, okay, if you buy this ticket directly from the artist, you get a little souvenir with them, maybe like a digital something that you can show on social media, or a little something.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah, it's definitely something that's been on the radar, because it's talking about it, and I definitely want to get in on that. Like, you know,
I think it's still an unknown space. Yeah.
I remember talking to a friend years ago and telling him like literally when I first moved to Nashville, so like 2006, and it was like, dude, you got to get a Facebook page. You know, everybody's getting this Facebook page, and they're like, I already have a MySpace. I don't need Facebook.
Yes.
They're like slow to the party on things. It's like, okay, well, you know, how's that MySpace?
You never know, right? Yeah. Have you? Where do we see you in the next 5 years, Jason? What do you hope for?
Man, I really have been thinking about that a lot lately, and that was had a lot to do with the recording of this album, Diamonds in the Desert, and this sort of really authentic, you know, music that's it really sounds like the kind of music that I like to listen to. So this has been an anchor record to recenter myself in terms of a musical style and direction, and where I want to continue to go. And then from there, I hope that, you know, that there's a stage that I can be on playing 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. I want my hair to turn gray like Willie Nelson, and I'll still making records and playing somewhere. And maybe the stages get smaller, maybe they get bigger. I don't know, but it's just like creating the music. And nowadays, more than ever, there's so many avenues to get music out. Like it used to be only the radio and only CDs on store shelves. That was it. And now there's so much more. And so just to reach people, if there's an audience out there that is into what I'm doing, I'd love to come out on the road and come to your town and play it for you.
Even if they're in Ireland, right?
Especially if they're in Ireland. That's definitely less than 5 years from now.
Yeah.
I've never been across the pond, and I really, really want to get over there and see that part of the world and maybe play some music too.
For sure. Well, thanks for your time today, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, really enjoy your podcast, and thanks very much. Yeah, keep up the great.